What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Tyler and behind me we have the Sandstorm. Today we're going to be doing one of the bigger DIY installs I've done on the Bronco so far. Super excited about it, but before I tell you what it is, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button and let's roll the intro. Alright, so if you guys have been following the channel for a while now, you know my Bronco does not have the Sasquatch package or the auxiliary buttons where up there in the roof where they're supposed to be, where the OEM auxiliary buttons would be. Instead I have a sunglasses holder. So I've been looking at alternatives, you know, like aux beam, like what I have in the Canyon and everything like that. But what I found on Amazon, and it's a little pricey, it's like 320 bucks before tax. I think it was like 350 after tax or whatever. What I found is a OEM replica of the auxiliary switches. And so this is going to replace that sunglasses holder. And instead of, you know, wiring it up, I've seen people try to add the OEM one and they mess with the fuses and things like that. Instead of doing all that, if you've seen Switch Pros or even something similar to aux beam, it comes with its own control panel. So everything runs power through this box right here, and then you have separate cables for each of the 6 auxiliary switches. So whenever you add lights, you just find, like this one right here is for auxiliary number 5. So you take those 2 wires and plug them into your light. Super simple. And then you have a fuse tap, some zip ties, and then some extra wire. And then you have the harness that actually plugs into the auxiliary switch, which plugs into the connection box. And then you're set up. So simple as that. The hard part is going to be figuring out how to wire things. I'm probably going to take this front portion of the roof off just so I can see where to run wires, because I'm thinking, with these Broncos being as modular as they are, I'm thinking there's got to be a spot somewhere where I can run cables and not have to drill anything like I did on the Canyon. So that's what I'm going to try to avoid, because I didn't like doing that on the Canyon. It was just a necessity on the Canyon because there wasn't really any other way to get wires into the engine bay. So we're going to take that front portion off, figure out how to route the wires, and then hopefully this won't take all day, but you know how that turns out. You start a project you think is going to be an hour and then it takes you 9. So we'll see how it goes. And then I don't have any lights for the Bronco, so once we have this installed, I'm going to find some extra wire that I have, and I'm going to pull the Canyon up next to it and unhook the KC bar and then run some extra length wire to that and see if the lights come on, make sure it works. And then the next step obviously would be to get some lights. I'm still playing with ideas on that. If you have any ideas on what lights I should put on here, let me know. In my head, I'm thinking the KC Gravity Titans like I have on the truck, but do 6 of them on the bumper instead of up on the roof. That's just my thoughts, but let me know your thoughts. Anyways, I'm gonna listen to some music, try to plan out the route, and then I will check back in once we have a solid plan. Okay, so I just wanted to show you guys. It doesn't really come with instructions. You can find it on their website, and I'll link all this below. But it has different connection points. So this one's going to connect right into the back of the auxiliary switches. This one's going to connect into the relay box, and then this will connect into your fuse tap, and you'll fuse tap that. I'll let you know later on in the video once I figure out what fuse we're going to tap into. I'll have to do some research on that, make sure I do it the safe way. But first I'm going to figure out how to run this wire. This is going to be the hard part, because this is the main wire that's going to run through the cab and to the back of the auxiliary switch and everything. So I'll check back in once I figure that out. So the instructions on the website are actually pretty good. I'll link the exact link to them below. If you guys want to buy this, I'll drop the Amazon link to the switches and then the link to the website for the instructions. But you got to take this bolt off, this bolt, and it does say to take the top off. But you got to take this panel off and this panel off, and it says to take that panel off. I'm not sure why. I'm not going to take that side off. I'm just going to take this side off because I'm assuming the wire is going to run up through here somewhere and then down into the engine bay. So we're just going to take this top off, but the instructions are actually super detailed. So we're going to do this first, and this is an 8mm. So take this one off, take this one off, and then there's some clips holding this piece. And then I'm actually going to disconnect the battery just due to the airbag being in there, so just to be safe. Okay, the next step was removing this A-pillar piece, and it was honestly super easy. It just pulled out. You don't really have to worry about breaking anything. You just pull it straight out towards the passenger, and it's kind of hanging there by this little bungee. You can undo that. I'm just going to leave it because I can work around it. So, and it looks like, just my guess, we're going to feed the wires through here and probably down through here to the engine bay. That's just my guess. We'll see once we get further in the installation, and I'll let you guys know if I was right or wrong on that. Okay, so you do have to take that side off because at some point you're going to take this whole front off, and you've got to unplug all the harnesses and everything that run along both sides. So you have to take both the passenger and driver side off. This is definitely a in detail install. But anyways, you got to use a 7mm. You got to pull the cap off your sun visor holder, and then you've got a 7mm bolt that you have to unbolt and undo your sun visors on both sides and unhook those harnesses. And then the next step will be this stuff. So yeah, so far this is pretty in depth. Like, it's not hard stuff, it's just bolts. It did have a step in there about loosening and unbolting the airbags and kind of dropping those out. I'm skipping that step for now. Hopefully I won't have to do that. I really don't want to mess with the airbags. I know it's not a big deal, but I just, if I can avoid it, I'm gonna avoid it. But anyways, let's go ahead and continue on. Let's get the other visor and start on this. Okay, the next step is taking the handles off with a T30 Torx bit, and do that on both sides. Once we take those off, then it's on to the next step. All right, so after the handles, we had to take this portion off and then take this A-pillar off and undo the harnesses that are going to the mirrors. We had to take the mirror cover off and unhook the mirror. And now we're about to pull this down, which will be this whole piece, which will give me access to the top of this. And then I'll be able to run the wires into the engine bay and install the aux panel. So we're gonna pull this down real quick, and this is just held on by clips. Should just be able to pull it straight down. And luckily, unlike the Canyon, a lot of these clips are metal. So like, for example, yeah, right there, they're more metal than plastic, so they don't break as easy. They're a little sturdier, and they come off easier. So they hold on tighter, they unhook easier, and I have yet to break one. So let's knock on some wood. Right, here we go. And let's pull that top down. Okay, so we've got the auxiliary switches installed in the dome light piece, whatever you want to call it. Not too bad. You had to unscrew the sunglasses holder and kind of pop it out. And then the auxiliary switches just snap in place. And then you can kind of see, I guess these are all manufactured the same way from Ford, so you can either have the auxiliary switches or the sunglass holder, and they're all built in with the piece for the sunglasses holder or the clip-in spots for the auxiliary switches. And it looks super close to OEM. You can kind of see on camera the texture is slightly different, a little more shiny, but obviously when it's inside the Bronco, you're not going to notice it. And it's a way better option than you know, having some kind of switch panel, exterior switch panel, because it looks OEM, it looks factory. And once this mess is all put back together, I can just plug and play lights. And yeah, so now I'm going to put all this back together. This actually popped off super easy. There's only 4 clips holding on this top piece, so it may look like a lot, but it's actually not that bad. I haven't broke any clips yet. So we're gonna put everything back together, plug everything in. We've got to run the wire still, so we'll run the wire and then we'll plug everything in. But honestly, it's a long process, but it's a super easy process. Don't let it overwhelm you or freak you out from doing it. You could definitely do this yourself. The only thing that made me nervous was I didn't like pulling the airbags down, you do have to do that so you can unhook some of the harnesses that are behind it. But anyways, let's go ahead and get this plugged up, get the wires ran, and let's start putting it back together. Okay, so we're working on running the wires. I haven't done it up here yet, but we've got it fed down back here. And like the Canyon, there is a rubber grommet, but above that, there's actually another rubber piece, which I have connected right here and put a hole in it. So it makes it a lot easier to run the wires, and then I'll just push that back through. And same rubber, I checked the thickness, they're the same. So, and then we've got the connection box bolted down right here. It's grounded right here, and we are fuse tapped into 139. So if you're on the driver's side and this is that way's the passenger side, then it's going to be right next. There's a 5 amp fuse right next to this tin. You pull that 5 amp fuse, put it into your fuse tap, and then push this fuse tab down in there, and that's how you do that. Now we're just going to finish wiring this portion up and then run the wires and put all the plastic back together. Okay, so we've got the wires ran. So this one right here is the harness for the new auxiliary switches, and I've got it zip tied to the existing harnesses, and then it's ran through here. You're gonna have to cut out a little slot once you take this off, but honestly, scissors cut through that plastic, so it's thin plastic, easy to cut. And then yeah, I just have everything zip tied together. And so now we're just gonna snap this back in, start putting panels back, and then hook the battery up and see if we get some light to the auxiliary buttons. And then we're gonna pull this next to the Canyon, hook up the KC light bar, and see if we get power. All right guys, we've got everything hooked up to the battery. We're fuse tapped, and then the actual whatever you call it, the box that controls the aux switches and the wires go into, we've got it all mounted up right here. It's sturdy, and then the wires running through there. And then we've got all the plastic back on, and we have power. So these look OEM. I'm gonna drop these down below. Super awesome. Honestly, I think they're worth the money and kind of the pain of taking all the plastic off. But we're gonna pull the Bronco out, and I'm gonna hook these up to the light bar on the truck and see if they power the lights. Like, yeah, we have power. I just wanna make sure everything works before I call it good. Okay, so I've got a wire running to the rock lights on the truck since I have no lights to really test on the Bronco, and I'm going to show you guys real quick. So the fuse tap that I'm in leaves those on. They should, I think that's what they said to use was fuse 139, which is a smart USB. I would assume they would shut off, but they're not. So I might have to change the fuse tap later. We'll see if it drains the battery or not. But if I turn this on, the rock light should come on, so let's see. All right, and there you have it. A good version of the OEM switches that really aren't that hard to install. It's just time consuming, but it's a good option. I'll link it below. It's gonna cost you about 350 bucks after tax in the US. But I think they're worth it. Just in my opinion, it looks OEM, it's nice, it matches everything. So check them out if you're interested, if you got the Bronco like me that doesn't have the switches, and they actually fit some of the F-150s too, I think. So check that out, and I'll see you guys in the next video.